Welcome back to Huawei Routing and Switching Elite Training. Today topic we are going to discuss on VLAN. Let's start our part 6.
Let's look into the next exercise here. We are going to look into the configuration on VLAN aggregation. Right, so still on the company A, we have this configuration. There are two requirements. The first requirement here is to implement communication between VLAN in the same subnet. So the same subnet here referring that 1111/24. Alright, so they need it to be able to communicate among themselves. So clearly this is a requirement for VLAN aggregation. And the requirement here is to save IP address. Alright, so that's also another indicator that VLAN aggregation is required. Okay, so this is a very simple topology. I have a switch and we have two sub VLAN, and we are going to configure the super VLAN. Alright, so let's look into the result here. So if we look into the configuration, first we are going to configure VLAN 2 to 3. Now as you can see from here, we have VLAN 2, 3 and 4. So we have VLAN 2 and 3. So our super VLAN will be VLAN 4. So VLAN 4 is an aggregate VLAN. So the sub VLAN is VLAN 2 to 3. Now as you can see from here that the VLAN 4 interface, alright, the L3 interface, layer 3 interface VLAN, where the IP address is 1.1.1.4/24. Now this is very important. This will allow the VLAN to able to communicate with the same subnet, and the keyword here is up proxy, inter sub VLAN proxy enable. So this is mandatory, so please remember this. The rest over here, port number 1 and port number 2, is just a normal configuration of a VLAN. Now once you have configured the above here, and when you do a ping from PC1 to PC2, you can see that you can ping from 1112 to 1113. Now for a normal person, it seems like it's just a normal ping, but please remember that they belong to two different VLAN. And for us to verify that, you can use a command called display sub VLAN, which is VLAN 2 and VLAN 4. The super VLAN is VLAN 4, and display super VLAN, we have a super VLAN with the sub VLAN of 2 to 3. Okay, so let's just jump back to our configuration and see how we can configure this. Okay, so let's jump back to our switch here. So this switch just rebooted. Okay, so let me change the undo terminal monitor first to prevent the terminal keep on popping up message. Okay, so let me go to change the system name. Now firstly, we are going to configure the VLAN 2, 3 and 4. Display VLAN, so I have 2, 3, 4. Okay, now VLAN 4 will be our super VLAN, so I just configure the VLAN 4. This will be our aggregate VLAN, and the sub VLAN will be 2 and 3. Okay, alright, so that are the two commands for you to configure the super VLAN. And don't forget to configure the interface VLAN, alright, with the IP address. Alright, so our IP address will be 1.1.1.4. That will be the VLAN 4. And more importantly is the up proxy, inter sub VLAN proxy. Now please remember that there are two commands over here. One is called the inner sub VLAN, another one is inter sub VLAN. So for the VLAN aggregation, we should use the inter sub VLAN proxy enable. This is very important. If you use the inner, it will not work. Next, we go into the interface Ethernet 001. The configuration is very simple. So just configure our access link and configure the port default as the VLAN 2. Okay, that is on client 1. Okay, Ethernet 001. So on Ethernet 002, this will be on VLAN 3. So let's go to the Ethernet 002. Okay, port link type access and port default VLAN 3. Okay, double check, display VLAN. There you have it. So we have here VLAN 4 is a super VLAN, VLAN 2 and 3 is a sub VLAN. So we have a interface 1, which is VLAN 2, and interface 2, which is VLAN 3. Right. Next, we are going to do a display sub VLAN. Alright, so you can see that the sub VLAN 2 and 3, and the super VLAN is 4. And when we do a display super VLAN, we have a super VLAN of 4, we're having a sub VLAN of 2 to 3. Now let's do a testing now. So on the client one, my configuration here is 1112. Okay, so I basically do not need to have any gateway. Alright, and I also have the client 2. I also do not need to have any gateway because they are using a proxy. Alright, so here I have 1113. So I'm going to do a ping to 1.1.1.4. That will be my super VLAN. You can see that I can get a reply. And if I'm going to ping to PC1, which is 1112, alright, there you see I have a reply as well. So if I'm going to do a ARP -A, you can see that both the .2 and .4 having the same MAC address. That's proven one thing, that this is a proxy that is helping us to do the inter VLAN communication using a similar subnet. Alright, so now you already see how the VLAN aggregation work. Alright, so now we look into the MUX VLAN. Alright, so here we have a company A, and this is the topology. So perform the following configuration according to the requirement. So the first requirement is to enable PC in VLAN 2 and 3 to communicate with PC in VLAN 4. So both the VLAN 2 and PC2 and PC3 can communicate with PC4. Alright, so it indicates that this is a principle. Okay, so second, prevent communication between VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. So these two cannot communicate, so this is a group. Alright, and number 3 requirement here is to isolate PC in VLAN 3. So VLAN 3, they cannot, those PC in the VLAN 3 cannot communicate, so we call this as isolate. Alright, so firstly, when you configure the MUX VLAN, you need to know what type of VLAN, what type of role. So VLAN 4 is a principal role, VLAN 3 is an isolate role, and VLAN 2 is a group role. Or in this case, we have the subordinate. Alright, so let's look into the configuration. Let's focus on the switch number 1. First, we create the VLAN, VLAN 2, 3, and 4. Now VLAN 4 is our principal. Alright, so this is a MUX VLAN. So we have a subordinate VLAN. So subordinate separate, which is this guy, and subordinate group, which is a VLAN 2. Now you can use this command called display MUX VLAN to determine it. So all of these are VLAN 4, that's my principal, and here is my subordinate. So subordinate 3 is a separate, and subordinate VLAN 2 is in the group. Now inside the interface, we just configure as per usual the access VLAN and what is the default VLAN. But very important is to enable this command, port MUX VLAN enable on all the port. Okay, so for example, here I have this as a PC number 4. So this is my access VLAN. Number 4 is my principal. Number 3, okay, which is here. Alright, port number 2 and port number 3 is belong to VLAN 3. Okay, and port number 1, this is the Ethernet 001, that's belong to VLAN 2. Alright, so let's jump into our configuration and see how we can configure this MUX VLAN. Alright, so my switch just booted up. So let me undo terminal monitor first. Okay, go to the system here, and I'm going to create the VLAN batch 2 to 3 to 4. Okay, and display VLAN. I have VLAN 2, 3, and 4. Right, first I'm going to configure my principal VLAN, VLAN 4. First, the command to define that this is my max VLAN. That's the principal. And I have subordinate. Remember that we have a group and the subordinate separate. So if I have a subordinate group, that will be the VLAN 2, and I have a subordinate separate, that will be VLAN number 3. Okay, so if I do a display max VLAN, this is to confirm that I have a principal number 4, separate is VLAN 3, and the group, alright, is VLAN 2. Next, we are going to configure our interface. Okay, so our Ethernet 001, that will be our port link type access, and port default, that will be on the VLAN 2. Okay, and please remember port max VLAN enable, very important. Next, I have the number 2, Ethernet 2 and Ethernet 3. Okay, port group member Ethernet 002 to Ethernet 003. Okay, port link type access and port default VLAN 3. Okay, port max VLAN enable, there you go. And finally, I have the interface Ethernet 004, that will be my principal here. Okay, and this one will be access port default VLAN 4 port max VLAN enable. Okay, display VLAN. So we have VLAN 2, 3, and 4. You can see that this is a max subordinate and this is a principal. And now we are going to do a ping to do a check. Alright, so let me go to number 2. So this is 1112. I'm going to ping to 1.1.1.4. Alright, so you can see that I'm able to ping. Okay, that's on the client 2 to client 4. And on client 3, 1113, again I'm going to ping to 1114. That also able to ping. But now, because you are in a separate, both client 2 and client 3 should not able to ping. So this is client 3. So I'm going to ping to client 2, 1112. As you can see that because it's in the subordinate separate, destination is unreachable. And if I'm going to go to client number 1, right, 1.1.1, I'm going to ping to 1114. I'm sure able to ping. But if I want to ping to VLAN 3, for example, if I'm going to ping to 1.1.1.2, I'm not able to ping because this is a subordinate group. Okay, so they are not supposed to ping between two different VLAN. So here we have the configuration. Alright, so just to repeat here, remember to create the VLAN, create the principal VLAN, and the rest here is just a normal configuration in the interface, except that now you have to just tell them that this is a max VLAN enable. So here we have all the configuration. Alright.
Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel.